Hello and welcome to Emotional Eating Unwrapped. I'm your host, Alana Kessler. So happy to be back with you again with another new episode. And today's episode I'm talking about is about inflammation. So we're going to be talking about what is inflammation, what are the causes of inflammation, um, just inflammation in general, because I feel like it's a topic that gets thrown around a lot, and I'm really happy about that because I think it's really important that we do give credit and that we do bring awareness to inflammation for being the root cause of a lot of diagnoses, a lot of symptoms that we feel in our lives, weight gain included, fatigue included. And I really think this conversation around inflammation is key so that we can really understand that inflammation is it is such a it's such a destructive. This is the thing about inflammation. It's destructive when it's triggered in the wrong circumstances, but it's healing when it's triggered in the right circumstances. So let's go into it. Let's talk about it. So what is inflammation? Let's just get super general and super first grade about it. Inflammation is when our immune system is activated to help the body heal. So that's actually what inflammation is. Okay, when the body becomes inflamed, it's usually a healing response. And that's a good thing when we have an actual injury. And you'll notice that when you do have an actual injury, so say you fall down or you break a bone or you twist your ankle or something, the immediate thing that happens is there's inflammation and there's the area of injury will usually get a bit puffy. There'll be water, right? So more water will surround that area. And what happens is that hormones get released, and the hormones that get released are optimized, are the hormones that are needed to facilitate healing. And then what happens is when we're injured, especially when it's an injury that's a broken bone or a twisted ankle or a torn tendon or ligament or a fall, is that we're conditioned to rest and recover, right? There's no real issue with us. It's like obvious. It's if we fall or if we break something, we have no choice but to rest and recover. And homeostasis, which is our body's natural place that it wants to be, gets restored. So that is the simple explanation. The thing is that in today's culture, our bodies get triggered into an inflammatory state, even when we don't have acute injuries like this. And what happens is that we don't realize that we are pushing ourselves to a place where our body thinks that it's injured. We're pushing ourselves to that place with our lifestyle. And we don't realize it until we hit whatever unique rock bottom that is for you, whether that's a huge amount of weight gain, whether that's an autoimmune disorder, whether that's extreme fatigue or adrenal fatigue, or some sort of lab result comes back, right? It's like we don't realize that we have an injury that is at that level that we need rest and recovery until we get some sort of metric that's that's reflected to us in a result or in a symptom. And that's a bit of a problem, right? Because our body doesn't know the difference, and our body is going to trigger and activate its inflammatory response when it thinks it's being injured. And things that can trigger the inflammatory response that has nothing to do with an actual acute injury, like I mentioned earlier, like a fall or like a broken bone or a twisted ankle or something that has pain, immediate pain. The things that can trigger the inflammatory response are lifestyle, diet, mental health, and emotional dysregulation, and relationships. Okay, these are the four primary buckets that can cause the body to activate cause the body's inflammatory response to get activated. Okay, these are the four areas that I know of. Now, I'm not saying these are the only four areas. Of course, feel free to share either in the YouTube comments or in the Q&A if there's anything else that you could think of. But um, the body will become inflamed if our lifestyle, our diet, our mental health and emotional regulation is dysregulated, or our relationships are unsupportive. And what happens when the body gets inflamed is the immediate thing is that our natural hormone balance gets thrown off. And when that happens, we start to feel symptoms. Symptoms occur that impede our day-to-day lives. And usually this happens over time. So it can be difficult to notice unless it gets really bad. Like you end up getting some sort of diagnosis, some sort of obvious physical symptoms, like adrenal fatigue, depression, overwhelm, psoriasis and skin issues are some, IBS and IBD, and weight gain. And you'll notice that a lot of what I just listed off are things that we might feel, but we play it off like it's normal, right? It's like we gain 10, 15 pounds. We distribute it to something else. We get tired, we distribute it to something else. So we continue to push our body, even when it gives us these little signs over time that we are starting to get inflamed. Our body is starting to become out of balance. But our society has become so conditioned to normalize feeling not our best and pushing through it that a lot of us, especially women, are living in a permanent state of inflammation. And we don't consider this a real injury, which it actually is. And so because this injury is more like a titration of actions, mindsets, and behaviors over time, rather than injury that gives you immediate pain and you have to you could do nothing but just rest and restore, people often miss that they're putting their body into an inflammatory state. And like I said, we try to manage symptoms and push through instead of just resting and recovering, which we would need to do if the injury was like a fall or an accident where our lives were actually impeded and we actually couldn't do anything. So that's the thing. It's like we don't respect these micro inflammatory states as much as we respect a massive accident that's going to put us out. And that's why we're conditioned to push ourselves to the max and only rest and relax when we've hit some sort of rock bottom. And this is really bad. This is so bad. And this is something that I used to do. This is something that I used to push myself so hard. And the thing is that on the flip side of that, if we don't train ourselves to source motivation to treat ourselves well in times where we haven't hit rock bottom, the only time that we can motivate ourselves to actually change or, get support, do something different, take responsibility, all these different things, like take new actions. If we're not trained in doing that before we hit rock bottom, we'll only do it when we hit rock bottom. And that means that subconsciously we might make ourselves hit rock bottom a lot so we can feel motivated to take those actions to be our best selves, which in and of itself isn't really isn't really in service of our own self-worth, right? We shouldn't have to make ourselves feel so bad where we feel like we then deserve to make a change or to invest in change or something like that, right? So, part of this conversation is about what are the causes of inflammation, and we're going to go into that. And then another part of this conversation, as you listen to this, I really want you to reflect on your own lives and start to see these micro moments and start to become more attuned to what inflammation feels like in yourself before you hit some sort of rock bottom, so that you can pull the reins a little earlier, because you deserve that. You really do. So let's talk about the different buckets and how they can be causing inflammation and some of the concurrent symptoms. So I'm going to start with lifestyle. So when I think about, or when I talk about how your lifestyle can trigger the inflammatory response in the body, what I mean is any activity where you continue to push through the activity, you continue to do the activity when you are exhausted. And I'm not talking about like new parents, right? Where it's like you have to do it because obviously, you're a new parent and you have to sleep 2 hours a night and you have to wake up and take care, right? So I'm not talking about that. Um I'm talking about what's it called? Like activities that you've chosen, for lack of a better term. So an example would be like a HIIT workout. It's like you push yourself to do an intense HIIT workout, or you force yourself to go for a run because you think that you're going to be burning calories, right? Like you force yourself to go for a run, you force yourself to go to Barry's boot camp, you force yourself to go to this HIIT workout even though your body's exhausted, and you look at your Apple Watch and you're like, I burned 650 calories, and you think that that is going to be is going to trump the fact that you're exhausted and that your body, it doesn't matter. Like your body's still going to burn those 650 calories, and that's going to bank towards your goal of weight loss, say, right? And that's a lot of the rationale behind why people push through exhaustion and go to HIIT workouts or go to push themselves in workouts. But here's the thing. The body always has the last word. If you're exhausted and you go to a intense work, your Apple Watch might say that you have burned 650 calories, but your body isn't going to release those calories because it thinks it's in danger, which means it thinks that it needs to conserve. And that's why oftentimes people are like, I don't get it. I work out so much and I burn this many calories. My iFit or my Apple Watch says this. And I don't get it. Like, why do I still feel puffy, inflamed? Why is my body not dropping weight? This is the reason. Because your body's not going to drop calories, which is its energy, which is its protection. It's not going to drop fat, which is its conservation protection. It's not going to release water, which is its protection, when it feels like it's in danger. So this is a lifestyle behavior thing. And this can also be attributed to workouts, but it can also be attributed to staying up too late. When you have the thing that you want to do here is you want to start to get in tune with your sense of being exhausted. And there's a difference between being tired and, or just a bit depleted, maybe because you had a long day and you're tired and you're exhausted. There's a different feeling between tired and exhausted. And for me, one of the biggest shifts and something that has helped me so much is knowing the difference between when I'm lazy. So maybe not tired, but lazy. Knowing the difference between being lazy and being exhausted. Okay, that is a huge, huge difference. When you're lazy, there's a different feeling sense to that. And in those instances, you then maybe want to encourage yourself to do something. But when you're exhausted, you don't. And so the skill is knowing the difference. Okay, another lifestyle trigger is chronic sleep deprivation. So your body's natural circadian rhythm being interrupted on a regular basis means that your organs will not be detoxified properly. Okay, so when we sleep, the reason why we want to sleep 8 hours a night is because our organs, every organ has a different time in the night that it gets detoxed. Okay, and this is something that I talk about a lot within traditional Chinese medicine. But each organ pair, so there's a yin yang organ pair. So a different conversation. If you guys are interested in that, I'm super happy to do another episode on traditional Chinese medicine and yin yang pairs of organs and things like that. But every yin yang pair. So, for example, a yin yang pair would be your kidneys and your urinary bladder. The kidneys are your yin organ, and your urinary bladder is your yang organ. Okay, so another one would be your lungs and your large intestine. So your lungs is your yin organ, and your large intestine is your yang organ. And you might, if you think about your large intestine and your lungs, you might even notice that when you're stuffed up, you might feel more constipated. And you might notice that when you relieve constipation, your sinuses open up. This is something that you might notice now that I said that. But those are yin yang pairs. And basically, the yin yang pairs each have a time in the night where they get detoxed. So if you wake up in the middle of the night, say at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, if you're not getting good sleep, or if you go to sleep too late, you're interrupting the circadian cycle of detoxing the organs. And that means that your body will feel stressed and your body chemistry will be altered. Your hormones will be altered, right? So sleep and going to sleep at times that allow the organ systems to get detoxed is super important. Okay, so the next bucket I'm going to talk about is diet. So there's so much conversation, diet and vegetables and fruit and their diet food and salad and all this stuff, and it's kind of been marketed and consumerized, if that's a word, to be a diet food. But the thing is that not enough high nutritional value foods like fruits and vegetables that have the enzymes to create calm in the body, not eating enough of those fruits and vegetables is going to impact your hormones, and it's going to impact your body's homeostasis. So it's not like eat fruits and vegetables to lose weight. It's not just about because they're low calorie. It's because they have enzymes in them. There are scientific building blocks in them to help the body be relaxed and be calm. Okay. It's like and this isn't all or nothing either. Like you could still have dessert. You could still have cupcakes. You could still have ice cream. It's not like you can't have it. That's why I often say it's about including more things. It's not about depriving at all. You don't need to replace your pizza with a salad. You just need to have a strategy where the proportion of vegetables and fruits in your daily eating schedule is enough so that your hormones and your body chemistry can be in a good place and can support your body feeling safe so that it doesn't trigger an inflammatory response. So not eating enough high nutritional value foods is one. Another thing is eating too little. Actually, eating too little is going to make your body more inflamed. So if you're counting calories, you're trying to eat like very little calories a day, um, that is actually going to hugely backfire on you. That's going to majorly backfire on you because it's just your body is going to think it's in a desperate injured state, and it's going to once again conserve calories, and it's also going to hold on to fat for conservation. So eating too little. And then the other one, it's kind of combined, but focusing only on calories without thinking about variety. So say that you're like, oh, okay, I'm counting macros and I need to hit this many macros, but you're counting calories and you're thinking about that. And all you're thinking about is making sure that you don't go over your calories. And so you just eat one type of food because you're like, I really love these chips and I really want that. I really want these chips and I really want this bread. And I guess I'll have a little bit of protein. But I'm going to just eat a lot of the thing I want that might just be one macronutrient, like a carb or something. And as long as I don't go over my calories, I'll be fine. But that's not going to work because one, um, calories is not what determines body weight or weight loss, right? It's what determines weight loss is being able to optimize your metabolism, which means that you need to have variety, which means that you need to eat enough food, and you need to have enough of the micronutrients which come from the high water content food, the high nutritional value food, like fruits and vegetables. So those are the ways that your diet can trigger the inflammatory response: not eating enough high nutritional value, high water content foods, eating too little, and focusing only on hitting your calories or macros without thinking about the variety of macros and micronutrients living together in the correct, or there's not one correct, but an optimal proportion. Let's move into the third bucket, which is mental health and emotional regulation. So how can mental health and our emotional state trigger inflammation? One is the feeling of always being on. Okay, so if we are constantly performing in a performative state, that can impact our mental health. If we're constantly having our antennas up, metabolizing stimuli from our environment, right? Whether that's responding to emails right away, texts right away, being on our devices, right? Constantly just overthinking, over metabolizing stimuli. And that comes from other people and external things, like I said, like our devices, but it also comes from our own selves, right? Our own inner thoughts, our own self-talk, negative self-talk, constantly just thinking and trying to assume everything that's going to happen, trying to become 3 or 4 steps ahead of everything, right? Another term for that is hypervigilance. Okay, so ways that what will happen is that when these things impact our mental health, like always being performative and always feeling like we're on, we're going to start to feel exhausted, we might start to feel depressed, and that impacts our mental health, that impacts our feeling emotionally regulated, right? When we have no boundaries with stimuli, external or that's going to create anxiety, most likely, overwhelm, a lack of feeling of connection to our center, ourselves. And that's going to be emotionally dysregulating. And again, like when we're hypervigilant, we're constantly thinking, trying to get control over the future. That is also extremely destabilizing for our mental health and our emotional regulation. And what happens is that if you do that over and over again, chronically, and that continues to happen, what happens is your nervous system gets dysregulated, your hormones get dysregulated, your body thinks it's in an injury, and you might start to have symptoms that we talked about earlier. And so these things usually are cyclical. And so once you start to notice and you start to notice your symptoms early on, and you just start to reverse engineer what might be going on in your life, this can really help you catch it really early. And that's how I want you to start to see symptoms like weight gain or irritable bowel or bloating or something like that. Because a lot of times these physical symptoms are manifestations of mental and emotional, or even our diet, lifestyle things. All right. And the last bucket I'm going to talk about is relationships, how our interpersonal relationships can impact our body's inflammatory response. And the relationship thing is connected to the mental health and the emotional regulation, because clearly, if we're in relationships that trigger our inflammatory response, we're likely going to feel emotionally dysregulated. And some of those examples of how relationships can trigger the inflammatory response is being in unhealthy or toxic dynamics. Right? So if you are somebody and you find yourself in a dynamic where you're anxious all the time, that is going to trigger your inflammatory response. Or you have to be on all the time, you're fighting, or there's a lot of volatility, or there might even be a lot of dismissiveness, right? You're not feeling heard, you're being shut down a lot. That's going to trigger the inflammatory response. That also folds into your needs are not getting met. And so that also is over time, that can really just gnaw at your mental health and at your emotional regulation and just at your body. If you have core needs, and so it's really important to know what your needs are and what your core emotional needs are, and to be able to express those to people that you're hoping to create an intimate partnership with. Other dynamics in relationships that can cause inflammation is chronic drama, right? So hot and cold, just situationships, like all these things where one second you're feeling on the top of the world, like cloud nine, the next second you're like, oh my God, am I going to be abandoned, right? So it's like constant chaotic drama. If you feel like you're in a relationship or situation where you have to suppress your feelings, you're fawning a lot, that can cause major inflammation in your body. And also, if you're in a relationship and you are not feeling safe and you don't feel like you're on a team, you feel like you're two individuals but you're not a team together, and that also can cause inflammation, right? So all of these relationship triggers can either be if you're single or if you're in a relationship, right? This doesn't just have to be one or the other. You can be experiencing these both. Just because you're in a relationship doesn't mean that the relationship is meeting your needs or makes you feel safe, or suppressing, or you feel safe, you feel heard all the time. And I think sometimes that can even be harder. I know I've been in relationships like that where it can be harder almost or not harder, but a different kind of hard, to feel like you are in a relationship and to admit or acknowledge that it is a toxic situation, or it's not a compatible situation. And I have a lot of empathy for that. And I think that if you're listening to this and that is you, know that doesn't mean the relationship's not repairable. But you don't deserve to just be in it and just continue to have your body be inflamed all the time. Because if you are in that type of situation and you are experiencing any of the physical symptoms that I described earlier, you might now see overlap. You might now see the through line as to why you might be experiencing some of these, right? I've had clients before who have come to me with, they have, with 20, 30 pounds, even more pounds to lose. And they think it's about food, but ultimately it actually is about their relationship dynamics or their emotional regulation. And they think it's about food. And so they've spent the last 5 years doing different like weight programs having to do with food. But really it was about rebalancing, a feeling of safety inside and in an interpersonal relationship. And then once we did that, we were able to heal all the other coping mechanisms that might have happened around food. And the weight came off like magically. So remember that a lot of the symptoms can be messengers for these other inflammatory triggers. Same thing with irritable bowel, bloating. So many times people think they have food allergies or this and that. They're spending so much money on just so much time. And really, it's an emotional, interpersonal dynamic that's really misaligned. And it's been that way for a really long time. There's a lot of suppression. There's a lot of shame or just overwhelm, confusion of what to do, that, and just sublimation of the whole thing. And so let's really give attention to this piece of it and how it can be a really big root cause of a lot of the inflammation and physical symptoms that you might be seeing or feeling in and on your body. Okay, so that was a big one today, but I really, really hope you enjoyed this conversation. Like I said, if you have any questions or feedback, please leave comments on YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, you can leave us a question in the Q&A section on Spotify. And don't forget to join me again every week for another new episode of Emotional Eating Unwrapped, where you can learn how to love eating, start losing weight, and keep it off with lasting change and sustainable strategies. If you found this episode insightful, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with those who may benefit from this empowering knowledge. I also have tons of free resources on my website to support you on your journey to loving food and losing weight. Just go to www.bewellbyak. And until next time, I'm Alana, and thank you for listening to Emotional Eating.